Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, then welcome. My name's Christina, and on my channel we talk all things beauty from my own experiences. So before you go, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave any comments that you have for me down below. We recently did a foundation review on another foundation, and since then I have been craving to try out the brand new foundations that are launching, and today we are going to be trying out Dior's new foundation stick. I have this in the shade 3N. We're going to be doing a first impressions and a wear test, possibly multiple days. I'm really pumped about this because when I was in Sephora and got a shade match, it was perfection. So I can't wait to see how this looks all over the face as well as with a full face of makeup. So if you guys are interested to see how this works on my oily acne prone skin, then let's get started. I purchased mine in stores at Sephora. It's also available at Ulta and any Dior beauty supplier. This is $52. It comes in 18 different shades. Looking at the shade range on Sephora's website, it looks like most of these are going to be neutral undertones. We do have a couple of cool rosy undertones thrown in there, a few warm undertones. I'm curious as to why. I also kind of feel like this shade range is not that great. It looks like they have a lot of fair light shades. They have a very small amount of like medium shades. I would say that mine was very obvious. My shade was very obvious because it was clear that the 2.5 was way too light for me, and then the 3.5 was way too yellow warm for me. And then we only have a couple of darker, richer shades thrown in here. It doesn't seem like they have a ton of shades. It seems like they could have done a lot more with this. I know with their other foundations, they have many more shades. The Dior Forever Skin Glow comes in 43 shades, and then the Dior Forever comes in 43 shades as well. I'm curious to know if they're going to expand, but even so, you would think that they would come out of the gate with a lot more shades. It seems like there's a really big jump from the light tones to medium, and then from the tan tones to the rich tones. I'm not very versed on a lot of Dior foundations. I think I've only ever tried the Dior Skin and Body. Is that what it's called? Skin and Body? The skin tint that was super popular before they had reformulated it. I believe that is probably the only Dior complexion product that I had tried in the past. So I don't really know what goes into the thought process with their shade range, but either way, this foundation says that it's a natural finish and it's a multi-use foundation stick for a natural blurred finish, up to 24 hours of wear and all-day hydration. It says that you can use it as a foundation or a concealer. So very similarly to the Merit complexion stick, it says it's not quite a foundation, not quite a concealer. So this seems like something that they're really pushing to also be a touch-up product. It says on here that you can apply it anytime for touch-ups, which I can already tell you guys is probably something I will not be doing as someone with oily skin. I do have to set my face with powder. So once I set my face and I set it with setting powder and setting spray, it's pretty much a no touch zone over here on my face. So what I like to do in my foundation wear tests is I test the foundation how I would normally wear my face of makeup. That means primer, that means setting spray, that means powders, because it doesn't really make sense logically for me to test a foundation in a way that I wouldn't typically wear a foundation, because right off the bat it's not going to be something that's catered and customized to what works best on me. So that is the reason why I use all the products that I use with my foundations on these wear tests. If you're looking for someone to just swipe the foundation on and leave it with nothing else, I am not the one. Just wanted to put that out there for you guys. On this side of my face, we are not going to be putting any sort of primer on, and on this side we are actually going to be using the Cali Ray So Blown Blurring Primer. This one I really enjoy. I've already gone through a tube of this. I think it's nice and hydrating. It's blurring. It really fills in those pores, and it just overall smooths my complexion. So it truly does everything that I personally need a primer to do. So we're just going to be putting a small amount of this all over my left side, your right side of the face here. And I do still have some healing hormonal acne going on right here. I don't have any active breakouts, thank goodness. It seems like it's starting to kind of die down a little bit. So nothing here is going to be too irritated. It really is just healing. So this is going to be a really good representation of how this is going to work if you have acne prone skin as well. So we're going to go ahead and apply this directly from the stick to the face. It looks like in their promo videos, that is what they typically do. And it says online that you can use this with your fingertips, with a brush, or with a sponge. It seems like they either use their fingertips or a sponge in the promo videos, but for me personally, I find that whenever I use just a sponge, it tends to soak up a lot more product than what I want. So what we're gonna do is put this all over the right side of the face starting off, and then I'm gonna go in with my brush just to blend it out seamlessly, and if necessary, I will go in and tap excess product out with my sponge. I find that foundation sticks tend to put a lot less product on than liquid foundations. It's just kind of like the nature of the product, you know? I want to blend this in with my fingertips so we can see what the actual texture of the product is. I just got it in my clip. I think it does have a scent. It smells a little bit floral, which I'm not a huge fan of. I did run this through the website that I use to check ingredient lists to see if there's anything that's gonna cause irritation or acne on the skin. And on one of the websites, which I will link down below, it says that this is all clear, but then on the Paula's Choice ingredient tracker list, it did flag 2 ingredients, which I will put down below, and those are strictly perfumes. I hate that there are perfumes in here, but we will see how this does on my skin. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and just blend this in. Do you see how seamlessly that's blending into my skin tone? Just the tone of this is really good. This is a great match for my skin tone. It feels quite silky. It feels slightly slippery, which I don't hate in terms of blending the foundation. We'll see how it actually dries down on the skin. I probably didn't need this much on my forehead because, like I've mentioned in previous videos, I don't like to completely cover my forehead since it does tend to be darker than the rest of my skin. I barely have to do anything other than like tap it into the skin for it to blend out. That's really nice. I could see why, in terms of the texture and blendability, they say that this can be a touch-up product. It seems like you need very little, and it seems like it would be something that blends out very well without factoring in that you would have other makeup on, you know? So this is the foundation completely blended out with just my fingertips. Honestly, I'm quite impressed. I don't even feel like I need to go in with a brush. I'll probably just do it for the sake of it. I'm just gonna blend out that edge to be a little softer. And I think I'll just go ahead and buff this to see if any excess product will come off of the face. So here is what the face is looking like. Looking at it in my mirror here, it definitely looks like a supernatural skin-like finish. I think that it added slightly more hydration than what I typically would look like after doing my skincare. I don't necessarily mind it. That's how I like my foundations to apply initially. And then I like to go in with more mattifying powders. So far, I think that this looks really good. The skin doesn't feel overly greasy. It definitely feels like it does, again, have some added hydration, but it seems like it's actually starting to dry down a little bit. Like you can feel the product on there, but it doesn't feel heavy and cakey. This actually feels very nice and lightweight. I'm very impressed with how this applied with just the fingertips. I think it did really, really well. I would say that this is on the lower end of medium coverage. I would say that this is somewhere in between light to medium coverage, leaning more on the medium coverage side of things, because you can still see my freckling and my sunspots and stuff pretty significantly. However, it did pretty much cover up any redness in my skin and uneven skin tone in general. Because this does say that it is a concealer as well, what I'm going to do is go ahead and let this side of the face dry. I like to let my foundations dry down for a couple of minutes in order to let it really settle in and give me exactly enough coverage before I go in with another layer or before I go in with concealer or whatever else is going to go on my face. In the meantime, we are going to go ahead and work on this side of the face, which again is the one that has the primer on it. In the instructions, by the way, it does say to apply this directly to your cheeks, nose, forehead, and chin with the flat part of the oval, and then blend it with your fingertips, the Dior face brush, or the Beauty Blender. And then as far as concealer is concerned, it says pretty much the same thing, just to apply it to the targeted areas and then blend it out with either three of those tools. I feel like with stick foundations, I do tend to go a little heavier handed with it. I don't know why. I guess it just feels like naturally there is a lot less product being spread on initially. So on this left side, I am trying to go in with a little less product just to see how it looks compared to the other side. Now again, you can see how easy this foundation is to blend in. It completely evens out the skin tone even with a smaller amount of product. And I think if I'm going to blend out any product with my fingertips, it's going to be a cream type of product because it has enough solidity to where it's not just going to seep in between my fingers and like absorb into my fingertips and stuff, but it's also not unblendable like a powder, you know? So it's right in between where you can still get a pretty even blend, but it's not going to be super messy just like a normal liquid foundation would be. But with stick foundations, I do find that I can tolerate it a little bit more. It's a little bit more comfortable, and I find that the blend is pretty seamless if I'm being honest. So here is what the face is looking like. Like I mentioned, we do slightly have a little bit less product here, but not by much. I just wanted to see how it did. But you can see the most difference where we have the freckling and the sunspots again, like I mentioned. But overall, it's looking pretty even. And again, it did cover up all of the uneven skin tones. And we do see my acne coming through and stuff. So again, somewhere between light to medium coverage. So now what we're gonna do is just take the same stick and I'm just gonna go over the areas that I would consider concealing. So under the eyes, I think we're actually gonna do that, which I never really take a foundation under the eyes, but since we're using it as a concealer, I figured we would just try it. And then I'm gonna go in probably with another light layer on the tops of my cheeks where we do have those spots, and maybe a little bit more on my chin again, just to see. And because we know it blends really well with the fingertips, let's go in with a concealer brush to see how this does with that. Taking my favorite BK Angie Hot and Flashy A506 brush as our concealer brush, I'm going to take this directly on the stick, and then we are going to go ahead and start layering this onto the face. Starting with the first side, I'm just going to take this on top of those acne spots and the sunspots, as well as right under the eyes. So this is what this side looks like as the foundation and concealer combination. I think it looks really good. It essentially just looks like we put another layer of the foundation on, which we did, but I would probably, and I will probably go in with a separate concealer to brighten the under eyes just slightly. But overall, I think that it looks really good. It definitely did add a bit more hydration. As you can see on the face, we're looking quite glowy here, but it doesn't look like it caked up. It didn't look like it was not layering well on top of itself, which is a great sign. And I went ahead and just kind of dotted more of the foundation in the areas that we're going to conceal on this side of the face, because I want to give it a couple of minutes to dry down before we blend it in to see if the coverage is going to be any different. And you can see the chin is doing pretty well with this foundation. It's not clinging to any dry spots because this area is pretty much healed in terms of active breakouts. I haven't been using drying acne products such as benzoyl peroxide the last couple of days whenever I've done my skincare. So we don't have a lot of dry spots right now. It is really just like the inflammation and the redness. So this seems like it's doing pretty well, especially with a little bit more of that hydrating property to it. We're completely blended out on both sides. I think this looks incredible in terms of the way that it completely covered up the redness and the inflammation on the chin area. You guys saw before we had the foundation versus right now. It looks very hydrated. It honestly doesn't even really look like I have too much going on aside from like the raised areas right here. I think letting the stick dry down in the areas that I wanted to have it concealed before blending it out actually did really help with coverage. I think that this side looks extremely flawless. While this side looks good, I felt like I had to use a little bit more product to get it to where this side is with less product. You can start to feel more of that hydrating property on the skin with that layer of concealing. I think that I can definitely feel a little bit of tacky greasiness, you know. We're gonna see how this dries down in the next couple of minutes before we go in with the rest of our like powders and stuff. I do want to go in with a lighter concealer underneath the eyes. And for that, I'm just gonna be using my Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin Lift and Flex Concealer in the shade number 8. I'm still testing this out. I've used it maybe twice so far, so I want to keep getting to know it. So we're just going to use this under the eyes. I don't know if I'm going to need it anywhere else. I think that I will just leave my skin as it is in terms of concealer. I went ahead and did my bronzer and blush combination. So now we are going to set the face with some powder and see how this does. I'm going to go in with my Laura Mercier Ultra Blur setting powder in the shade Rose. I've been really liking this to brighten up the under eyes and just the face in general without being too much. So it's this very lightly rose shade. So what I want to do is bake under the eyes. That's what I typically do. Taking this beauty blender tool, I'm going to go into our powder that we put on the cap, roll this out on the hand just to even out the coverage, and then stamp this under the eyes very lightly. And we're gonna bake slightly next to the nose. Now, even though the face looks very hydrated right now, this seems to be as much as it's going to dry down since I've had this on for quite some time. And we're just gonna take the excess. Actually, I whipped out my Laura Mercier puff that came with this powder, and I'm just gonna use this with the powder to set the rest of the face very lightly. I'm gonna try to very lightly set the chin just because I don't wanna mess with how good it's looking. So any excess that's on the puff or the brush that we use later, I'm going to use on the chin. And lightly setting the blush bronzer combination so we can go on top of it with some powder. And I'm pressing ever so slightly on the face just to get the powder in there, and then we're gonna buff it in with a brush. Okay, and now we're going to take this brush and just wipe off that excess bake under the eyes as well as all over the face, just any excess powder that we have going on here. And I'm going in with my blush and bronzer powders. I'm going to be using my RMS bronzer in the shade Bikini Beach. This thing looks so messy. And then we are also going to be testing the Singe Beauty Evocative Silk Blush in the shade Riveting Rhubarb. I've already tested out this formulation and I know that it looks really beautiful. It has this great sheen to it, but I'm testing out this shade today. All right, guys, so we are back. This is our finished face. I went ahead and used all of my powder products. I set the face down with my Laura Mercier pressed Ultra Blur powder as well as my finishing powder. And all we have left to do is to use setting spray. And I want to say that I never wear a face of makeup without setting spray, which is why I opt to use setting spray during these tests, because again, I'm wearing the foundation as if I would wear on my normal routine. So I'm gonna wear it the way that I do my makeup routine. Some people may not agree with that, but personally, that's what I usually do because I know that my skin, being oily as it is, needs some sort of setting to it. So we are probably gonna go in with the One Size Until Dawn setting spray because this does say that it is a more hydrating foundation. I am assuming that throughout the day, even though it says that it's a 24-hour wear, I think that it's going to start showing my oils faster than more of a matte foundation. So that's what we're going to do. Now let's talk about my thoughts on the foundation. So far, based on first impression, I think that this is wearing so beautifully. It looks just like skin, aside from the fact that you can see that I have powder and stuff on. I think that the actual foundation, the way that it laid and the way that it blended, I'm super impressed by it. The blendability for sure was the most impressive part for me, especially the shade match. And I really appreciate the fact that it's really easy to blend. If you're going to tout that a product is great for reapplication and touch-ups, it should be quite easy to blend if you opt to do that on the go. So I think that this is great in terms of blendability. Now, the way that it layered with other products, I think that it worked really beautifully with the products that I chose to use. Sometimes when I go in with more of a matte foundation, I will kind of balance it out with more dewy cream blushes, with more dewy bronzers and stuff like that. But I chose today to make it a little bit more seamless because I felt like the hydration that we had going on was pretty much the most that I wanted it to be at. So I kind of toned it down with some cream and liquid products that tend to dry down slightly more matte than like hydrating. I think that this set down beautifully, it layered beautifully. I didn't lose any coverage, which I'm really impressed by. Sometimes when it comes to stick foundations, because they are more on that creamy side, when you go in with more liquids and creams, it can have the tendency to move the foundation around, but I don't think that I had that issue with this one at all. It seems like everything pretty much stayed in place. And again, I'm very impressed with the way my chin is looking. I do think that you can still see my acne scarring and stuff, but I would much prefer to slightly see it where it's a little bit more subtle than have product caked onto it and in turn making it look a little worse than it could look. I am a little bit nervous though. I feel like we are starting off slightly more glowy, so we'll see where we're at in a couple of hours. We may have to do a little powder touch up at some point in the day. I do feel like once it's set down with powder, you can't feel the foundation, but in terms of dry down, it doesn't seem like it's going to completely dry down. So if you do have oily skin, I do think that you're going to have to powder this down, even if you only powder certain areas like the T-zone. If you have very dry skin, I think that this will give you a beautiful, healthy glow. And if you have normal skin, I think it could go either way, honestly. We're gonna check in a couple of hours to see how this is doing. And then at the end of the night, I will come in with my last check-in and talk about all of my thoughts about this foundation. Hey guys, I am back. It's 6:30 p.m. and I actually forgot to tell you guys when we finished our full face of makeup, which is around 1 p.m. So we've had this makeup on for about 5.5 hours now. As you can see, we are significantly more oily than we were earlier. You can probably see it in my hair as well as on my face. Here is a little bit of footage for you guys to see. I would say that we're pretty evenly oily throughout. I would say where my pores are a little bigger, closer to my nose on the side with the primer, you don't see the oil as much, but there's still some oil production there versus the right side where we don't have any primer at all. That's probably the biggest difference that I'm seeing. Everywhere else looks pretty evenly oily in my opinion. Looking closely to how this is wearing though, aside from my oils, I think that the foundation has stayed put everywhere that I have placed it. And I also feel like my blush is staying put. I feel like you can still see a good amount of my bronzer there as well. So all of that to say, I think that the foundation has pretty much not moved at all. That's pretty impressive to me. I don't think that there's any fading either. And my chin, where we are a little bit more problematic, still looks hydrated. Doesn't look like any of the foundation or the powder are pooling anywhere or caking anywhere. Very minimal creasing right in my nose. There is creasing. And again, the side with the primer, there's slightly less pooling right around the nose here, as you can see. Honestly, even around the eyes, we have a little bit of creasing on like my deeper set crease on either side. That could be a mixture of the Dior Stick and the Danessa Myricks concealer. Usually I'll just go in, use my finger to like pat it out, and then I'm pretty much good. I get creasing in those specific creases every time I wear concealer. It's not really anything new, but it doesn't seem to be any more aggressive than usual. Aside from the oils, I truly feel like this foundation still looks incredibly flawless. I feel oily for sure, but I didn't notice that I felt the foundation more throughout the day. I didn't feel like with the oils coming through, the foundation was starting to feel heavier or cakey. Typically, if I look this oily, I would powder. Like I would definitely use my Laura Mercier pressed powder to powder my face just to touch up and stuff. And while I said that I wanted to apply this foundation the same way I typically would with an everyday wear, I think for the sake of testing out the longevity, I'm not going to touch it right now. I'm not going to touch up or anything like that. I'm going to leave it as is and see how oily we get in the next few hours. I do think with the amount that we've gotten going on here, it is going to get significantly more oily as the night goes on. I've just been home editing and doing laundry and stuff, so it's not like I've done anything really tiring or, you know, straining. So I'm curious to see how this would perform if I was out and about and in the heat and stuff like that. But either way, it still looks really, really, really good in my opinion. If you're not oily, I can imagine this being flawless still on you. Okay, that is our first check-in at 5.5 hours. I will probably check in another 4 to 6 hours, and then we'll call it a night. Hey you guys, so I got really tired this night, but I was able to get my last check-in, and now I'm just going to do a little voiceover for you. So as you can see, we are significantly more oily than we were a couple of hours prior. Again, you can kind of see it in my hair. I'm looking so exhausted here. But I think at this point, both sides of my face were evenly oily, even the side with the primer. You can see that there's definitely pooling in the nose area, but it doesn't seem like it got significantly worse. It pretty much looked the same in my opinion. And at this point, I did want to powder my face just to see if we could do a little refresh. I'm going to use the Fenty Beauty Invisimatte here. And typically on a regular day, I would powder my face sooner. Like I mentioned earlier, I would powder it around the 6, 7, 8 hour mark whenever I was looking pretty oily. So this is definitely more oil to mattify. Just keep that in mind. On camera, you can see it definitely does mattify. It looks pretty good. It doesn't move the foundation at all. It doesn't move any of the blush on my face either. So if you were really in a pinch and you needed to blot your face down, you could definitely do that with this powder. However, you can kind of see here, and I'm trying to show you guys, that if you go a little heavy-handed with the amount of oil that was produced on my face, at least, I can start looking a little bit cakey where my pores are larger. It doesn't look super great, I'm gonna be honest. I just think that the amount of oils and the amount of powder that I needed for it just wasn't a great mix, but here I'm just showing you guys what that looks like. Overall though, for the first day, I was very impressed. I think that everything stayed put. I did have a little bit of transfer while I was eating dinner. I like wiped my face on the napkin that I was using, and I did see a little bit of foundation. Some of that can be because I am oily, so if you are dry or if you have normal skin, you most likely will not have as much transfer. That's just, you know, with every foundation. But I really liked the way that this wore. I liked the way it felt on the skin. It felt very lightweight throughout the day, and I would give this an A+. Hey everyone, so it is the next day and I did a full face of makeup again using the Dior foundation stick. I think that this looks incredible. I got really tired last night and I didn't end up talking through how my makeup was looking, but you guys just saw, and I did a little voiceover for you, just sharing my thoughts on how the foundation wore throughout the day. This foundation is truly incredible. It feels like it looks flawless. My skin looks so perfected and it just has the right amount of hydration to it, especially after I powdered my face down. Today I am testing out the Makeup by Mario setting powder as well. These two are still fairly new to me, so we'll see how it works out. I really wanted to play around with this one. I did use it to bake my face as well as just set the overall face. I'm also wearing the new Fantasy Cosmetica and Makeup Just for Fun palette. This is the Enchanted Autumn palette. My friend Amanda collaborated with Fantasy Cosmetica, and this is such a beautiful fall color story. I love this so much, and I'm wearing the lip balm in the shade Elixir. I'll put everything I'm wearing in the description box down below, but I'm really happy with the way that this foundation applies. I actually really enjoy applying this straight to the face and then blending it out with my fingers. I feel like I truly probably wouldn't even need a separate foundation brush if I was really in a pinch. I think that this blends out seamlessly. I'm so happy with the blendability of it. I will say it is not the most mattifying foundation, but again, it doesn't really claim to be. It does claim to be a natural finish foundation. I'm curious to see though how this would work out if I like touched it up during the day, but I truly don't think as an oily girl that requires setting powder and the such, I don't really know if that's really the move for myself. I will definitely be playing around with that one day and I'll update you guys on how that goes. It seems like something that's going to be consistent every time you use it, which is so nice to have a product like that in your arsenal. It's definitely pricey, but I am beyond impressed so far. I can't get over how beautiful the skin looks. I will be checking in at the end of the day to let you guys know how this wears also. I did set with the powder, like I said, and I still set with my One Size setting spray. And I also primed my face with my Danessa Myricks Blurring Balm. This is just the universal shade. I use this as my primer today. So hopefully with this combination, my oils don't come through as aggressively or as quickly. Hey guys, checking in. It is about 9:50 p.m. So we've had this face of makeup on for about 9 hours. I did finish my makeup around like 12:45 this afternoon. I forgot to tell you guys again what time I finished. This is a full day of makeup for me, honestly. And again, quite oily. That's kind of inevitable for sure, but I think the makeup held on really well. Again, I see my blush, I see my bronzer, I don't see any caking, and I feel like I have even less pooling of the product around my nose than I had yesterday. The foundation, aside from my natural oils, still looks very, very good. I really want to see how this powders down with a different powder from what we used yesterday, which was the Fenty Beauty Invisimatte. I do have my Laura Mercier Ultra Blur pressed powder, which is no longer pressed. It is cracked like crazy, but I'm going to use this big chunk that I have, and I'm going to use this to attempt to powder the face down. And I think I'll go a little bit lighter. Like I'll spread this out a little more than I did yesterday. All right, so this is with minimal powdering. In person, I think I definitely look a lot less shiny. I don't think my studio lights are really helping me. I still look quite oily here, but I promise you guys, this does look better. I would probably go out with my makeup looking like this, honestly. Overall, this foundation really does pass the test for me. I think that just the ease of use of it was incredible, and the fact that it's worn pretty much flawlessly for 2 days straight is really, really nice. I know that this is quite expensive. I probably wouldn't have picked it up on my own if I didn't have some of you guys asking me to talk about it. Because of that, I did become quite curious about it, and I'm glad that I did pick it up. As some of you guys may know, because I do this for a living, my makeup collection is quite large. It's definitely larger than it needs to be, and I feel like this foundation is definitely going to become one of my go-tos. And for me, even though this is a higher price point, if I'm able to use this as like an everyday type of foundation, that would make it worth it for myself. All right, guys, that is everything for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. Please let me know if you did, and also let me know if you have any questions for me in the comments down below. I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this one, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.